What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Daily Dime here on Wednesday. We had some really good calls yesterday on the show here, and yet we came up short because Maxey forgot how to make a shot in the first quarter again, and we were half a point short on John Collins. All of the multiplier picks we had, the Paul George assists, the Steph rebounds, the Tari Eason stocks, they all hit, and we don't get there. So one of those days where we know the process was good, we just didn't get the results we wanted.
Yeah, man. Tyrese Maxey getting 11 minutes in the first quarter. 1 for 6. He's 3 for 13 in the last two first quarters. That was a tough start to the night. And again, I know some of those picks, Steph Curry, he was over that at the start of the third quarter almost.
Yeah.
The Paul George pick was good by you, but it never feels good the next day when it's okay, well, we got close, but that doesn't increase the number in our account on Underdog, right? So I was feeling down about it last night, and I think what contributed more to that feeling for me, Alex, was I got dog walked in DFS last night. It was the worst slate I've had all year. So again, the beautiful thing about basketball and the beautiful thing that brings us here on the Daily Dime is an immediate opportunity to turn that frown upside down and get back to business here tonight. 6 games on the slate. Couple teams we're still waiting on injury reports for. Shout out to the Magic for already giving us the injury report after their loss last night. They still advance in the NBA Cup. So we're still waiting on Pistons, Pacers, Bucks, and Clippers in terms of their injury report. But let's start. I see you've got it on the screen. We won't wallow here in our sorrow any longer. Let's talk LeBron. Lakers going to South Beach tonight to take on the Heat. The Heat are 2.5-point home favorites here, 216 implied total. And look, man, I've been talking for a little over a week now about this, what I think is a Lakers mirage. I think they are a middle of the pack team in the West. And we had kind of got our hopes up for them after the first few weeks of the season. They got crushed by Minnesota the other night. And LeBron, it wasn't just that game. He's been on a bit of a cold streak. I think it was 0 for 19 from 3 over his last 4 games, averaging what I think is a career low in points. We have the technology here. Let's make sure. I mean, this is the lowest points per game average he's had since his rookie year back in 2003, 2004. He's still averaging 22 points per game. And that's boosted up a little bit, Alex, by a couple big scoring games, mid to upper 30s. He's only over this 21.5 number in 8 of his 21 games this season, but there's 6 of them that are 20 points, 19 points, right there on this line. But what I want to do tonight is kind of buy into narrative LeBron. We know LeBron likes a narrative. We know LeBron likes the drama. He's over this number, 21.5 points, in all 5 trips back to Miami since he joined the Lakers. Now, we could go back to his second stint with the Cavs and extend that sample size, but I think just keeping this to his Lakers tenure is proof enough that LeBron gets up for these games. He's averaging 33.8 points per game in those 5 games in Miami. Of course, this is dating back to the 2018-19 season. And that number is boosted by the 51-point outing he had in that first season with the Lakers. But in those 5 games, he's also put up no less than 27 points in a game back in South Beach here. And again, if we are just examining this LeBron to his former team narrative, he's over this number in 5 of 6 games going back to Cleveland with the Lakers. So again, he does put up the points when he goes back to Cleveland, when he goes back to Miami, and the fact that he's coming off maybe the worst game of his season, 4 of 16 from the field, really struggled to get to that double-digit point mark and extend that streak he has going for himself. They lost by 29 to the Wolves. And again, small underdogs here on the road, and I think deservedly so. We know Austin Reeves is questionable. A couple other guys have been in and out of this lineup. And again, I don't think this team is great, but I think LeBron's going to make his mark here tonight on this game, bouncing back from the bad game he's had, trying to bounce back from this little bit of a slump he is in from 3, and of course going back to see all of his frenemies there, Pat Riley and the like in Miami. So you also made a good point to me. We were kind of discussing between points and his PRA. His PRA is at 38.5. I'm fine taking the higher than selection there. He's had multiple triple doubles this season, right? So where maybe he's falling back a little bit in the scoring department, the peripherals have been there. So if you wanted to go to the PRA as well, you certainly can. If you're playing on Prize Picks, the fantasy score prop is set at 43. And I think on Prize Picks, the fantasy score prop is my favorite. On Underdog, I'm going to side with the points here. And this is also somebody that if you want to hold off until Underdog posts those fantasy score props, they don't give us as many of those props as Prize Picks does, but they give us the studs more often than not. So I think we do get a LeBron fantasy line here. And if it's in that range of 43, then that would become my favorite prop as well. But here on the stream this morning, 21.5 points, higher than that for me on LeBron James.
Yeah, waiting for that fantasy points prop worked out really well with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander last night. I think this is another one where I have interest in waiting. But you also, me, Zach, I love these first quarter picks, and I love trying to ladder. So I think a very interesting kind of pattern that we have seen so far from the Lakers, especially in the first quarter, is they are much more conservative with LeBron on the second leg of back-to-backs. And so kind of seems like there's an opportunity each time they're coming off of a back-to-back where he just played 6 minutes in the first quarter, 7 minutes in the first quarter, instead of the 8 to 9 that he's playing outside of those back-to-backs, to go to the first quarter. And we would also still be playing into this narrative of we're going to get a more aggressive LeBron tonight. He's going to try to break out of the slump, especially being in Miami. So I think over 4.5 at 1.15x is interesting. I think a lot of these numbers are actually interesting, where you could maybe play like the 4.5, the 8.5, and the 9.5 all as a ladder. What do you think about these first quarter numbers?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the 4.5 I would prefer that than going right to the 5.5. Looking at his first quarter game log this season, again, it's not a 1-to-1, but they can help inform our decisions here when we're trying to ladder. He's over the 4.5 number in 7 of 21 first quarters this season. And then he's gone above that 7.5 number in just 2 of 21 first quarters, but both of those were 10 and 14. So I think for me, it's the 4.5 number and then going all the way up to 9.5 if we're going to hit a ladder here on LeBron's first quarter.
Yeah, and I don't love any of these the way that I liked the Maxey first quarter pick yesterday, because as you just said, 7 of 21, that's 33%. That's not great. So we are relying on the narrative aspect here, which is not something that I like to do, but I do think this is one of the stronger aspects of it. And you're also getting the fact that, a lot of those 21 games, he wasn't playing 8 to 9 minutes in the first quarter like we can expect him to do here tonight. So again, like this is I think I'm still going to wait and see what the fantasy score number is like. I'm also going to wait and see, like, maybe this 3.5 becomes 1.0x instead of 0.9x. So I feel like we can wait on this one, and it's not likely that we're going to see some real reverse line movement on anything that we like with LeBron. So I think we can be patient on this one, because it doesn't seem like either of us have anything we totally love so far this morning. So with that said, I'll go to the one that I'm looking at right now. I wish that Paul George was playing tonight so badly.
So you didn't have to do this.
Because for one thing, we would have Tyrese Maxey at 5.5, maybe even 4.5 first quarter points if Paul George was playing again. We would also have that Paul George first quarter assist, which hit again. Like, the guy is just he's playing the role of playmaker in the first quarter, and I think it's something we can continue to take advantage of over the next few games. But in the meantime, we can go right back to Tyrese Maxey first quarter points. We know the usage is going to be there. It's not just that Paul George is out. It's that the usage already has been there for him in the first quarter. He just hasn't put the ball into the basket. But it's not like he's having, a lengthy shooting slump or anything like that. It's just the first quarter, the last 2 games, he happens to not have shot the ball well. And then he's come out in the second half significantly better offensively, especially 2 games ago. So I think over 6.5 first quarter points is still solid here for Maxey. And I'm not as interested in laddering this one, because these multipliers just aren't very good, even at some really large point totals. But that shows even underdog knows, like, hey, if this guy's just making shots, the usage is going to be there. So the chance that he blows past the 6.5 is certainly well within the range of outcomes. So I do like the over 6.5. It's just not as strong as the 5.5 we were getting yesterday.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you there. And again, like, is the matchup pristine? No, but to me, it's about the usage there, like you mentioned with Tyrese Maxey, with Paul George out of there. Like, even if you put Jared McCain back into the starting lineup, that number looks good with the usage you can expect. And also, again, you got 11 minutes out of Maxey yesterday. We could certainly see him play the entire first quarter here. Back at home, right? They are slight underdogs, but I like that one again with Paul George out, man.
Yeah, I wish they had some McCain props up too so far. I guess they're waiting to see if he will re-enter the starting lineup or not. But as long as the numbers aren't significantly higher than they were yesterday, I think we'll find some value on McCain too. If he's starting, we could even look at some first quarter point stuff for Jared McCain. Where would you like to go next?
Let's go to Atlanta at Milwaukee here. And this one, from an implied total standpoint, 236, right? So we're 10.5 points above the next closest implied total here at DK Sportsbook. Bucks are 4-point home favorites here. And I'm looking at Bobby Portis. Now, if we started the Daily Dime at 11 a.m. Eastern, we would have had this in without question. At first, I was on the 6.5 rebounds number. We nerfed that one to 0.9. So, okay, I'll go to PRA at 20.5. 15 minutes ago, that gets nerfed down, of course. So, right now, my favorite Portis prop that is still left would be the higher than 19.5 points plus rebounds. I don't think we will get a fantasy score prop on Bobby Portis here on Underdog today. So again, this is not one that I love. This is not something I'm as high on as I was on DeJounte Murray on Monday or Steph Curry's rebounds last night. But he's averaging 20 points plus rebounds per game on the season. At that number, he's over in 4 of his last 6 against this Atlanta team. Again, 4-point home favorites, 236 implied total. This one's going to get up and down. And we know that Bobby Portis thrives in an up pace environment statistically. So the FTN model has him as a over lean here this morning on his points and rebounds. But man, I really would have loved to get just the rebounds themselves at that 6.5 number or the PRA at a 1x multiplier. So if you wanted to, let's see what they're offering in terms of the ladder opportunities for rebounds and PRA there. So 7.5, because we have them. I can let me get a refresh to make sure I haven't missed an update here, but we had them slightly above. Looks like we may have gotten an update. So we have them slightly above the 7.5 number, but again, it's not something that I love. So I'm really looking at the points and rebounds here. Decent track record in the past with that. We know he can really get going. So that's where I lean. And of course, coming on the second end of a back-to-back here, maybe we get somebody in front of him taking a seat tonight. It's not, that's not indicated by this line as 4-point home favorites against an Atlanta team that has been, I think, better than advertised so far this season, or better than expectation. But that's where I'm at this morning in terms of the 3 pick that I have in on Underdog. Is this 19.5 points and rebounds for Bobby Portis, the LeBron James points, and that Maxey first quarter prop?
Yeah, I've been trying to see. It looks like his time is being fairly split between center and power forward, whether he's sharing the floor with Brook Lopez or not. And I bring that up because this Atlanta team has been a phenomenal stocks matchup for power forwards, especially plus 96% for steals, plus 61% for blocks, which is kind of insane. That will certainly come down. But it's also certainly going to still be a great matchup in that department. Also good for centers, plus 19% steals, plus 31% blocks. But centers are also plus 39% three-pointers made. So potentially a very good matchup for Bobby Portis. And it's one where you mentioned we probably don't get the fantasy points for him, but if we do, I would love the fantasy points because I know that fantasy points prop will not account for what a great stocks matchup this is for him. So whenever, like we said yesterday, whenever we like a guy across the board and we see that stocks upside, that's when we want to go to fantasy points the most. So I will be on the lookout for that, which probably means like I'm almost definitely not going to be placing anything in the next few hours. I'm going to wait and see what the rest of the board looks like. I think it's also time for us to give a refresh and see if we have any stocks props up at the moment. So I'm going to guess not, but oh, look at that. We do. So let's take a look through these and see if there's anything that we like right now. Anything that you are immediately drawn to. Like the Brooke Lopez is where I first went to, but it's only 0.89x, so I don't think we can do that.
About Dyson Daniels, let's check out what he's been doing, right? Because Atlanta is getting healthier. Bogdan is back. DeAndre Hunter is back, right? Ricochet is sticking in this starting lineup, but what else is sticking? The minutes for Dyson Daniels.
This still looks incredible.
In any of his last 5 games. Checking out what we've got here in the projections this morning. We've got him for over 4 stocks. So get that Dyson Daniels against Milwaukee with this 236 total. Get that in there. And I actually
in the last 6 games.
Go ahead.
Or in his last 6 games, he's gone 5, 2, 4, 3, 4, and 4 stocks. This 2.5 number is too low no matter who it is. So definitely like that one. What do you think of Gobert against the Clippers, who have also been a very good stocks matchup for opposing centers?
On the surface, I don't hate that at all. What is the number at? 2.5?
2.5, yeah.
We've got him just above 2 here tonight, and that's with a pretty healthy minutes projection, right around 36.5. So the
he's only at 2.0 stocks per game this season.
Gobert.
Yeah.
So like I'm not in love with that one on the surface, but again, maybe we're not factoring in the matchup against LA and how the Clippers have been giving up the stocks to the opposing front courts.
He was at 2.8 last year. Like I think our model is pretty dialed into the fact that he's just not racking those up the way he previously was. So I'm not crazy into it. I think part of that too might be like when Towns was playing alongside of him, all of that was on Gobert, and now he has a maybe a slightly different kind of role responsibility there. So I don't love that one the way I love the Dyson Daniels one.
Let's unless you see anything else here on the stocks props, I want to go back to Philly and I want to look at Yabusele. Because Yabu, again, we know no Embiid tonight, no Paul George, Andre Drummond still out with the ankle. We got Yabu starting at the 5, like going up against this Magic team tonight. Could we see a Dembona slot in there just for the size? Maybe. But Yabu, like what he lacks in height, he makes up in width and weight. So like I don't think he's going to be just thrown around out there by a Goga if Goga plays, right? Goga was a late scratch last night. So from the DFS side, like we're going to have some interest in Mo Wagner. We're going to have interest in power forward center eligible Wendell Carter, but we should get big minutes out of Yabu here. And the model is really loving some of these picks here. Over on Prize Picks to start, I do want to note his 8 points plus rebounds line is set at 18. Our projection for his points plus rebounds is north of 21. So I love that over on Prize Picks. I think he is nerfed here on Underdog, and it's set at 17.5. So you can see right here on these projections, like with the points, with the rebounds, we love those higher than selections here. So looking back on Underdog, right, they have over 7.5 rebounds is 1.11x. We have him for 8.8 rebounds. He's 10.5 point line. We have him for a hair shy of 13. His PRA is 1.05x to take the higher than. And that just, again, with what we have modeled here this morning, and he's hovering right around 32.5, 33 minutes in our morning run. All of those numbers look great. And so like, I think maybe dialing into the PRA, the 20.5, where we've got that number again, like right around 24. That might be kind of just all encompassing the stats that he could rack up tonight. I think that might be my favorite on underdog at this point for Yabu. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I think Dyson Daniels is definitely still my favorite pick that we have so far. I think Yabu might pass Maxey as my second favorite here, and then really wanting to wait on potential fantasy points for both LeBron and Bobby Portis as well. And yeah, and then just kind of hope that we get something else in the either the fantasy points or the stocks department. We also didn't take a look at just the blocks themselves or steals themselves, so maybe we find something there. Unlikely. I mean, the AD 1.5 blocks is always interesting, but it's only 0.85x. So we do have the multipliers potentially. Well, maybe not really. If we went to a ladder on either like maybe we go with a ladder on the LeBron first quarter points, then we go to Anthony Davis 0.85x on the blocks, but it's not something I feel strongly about.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. I'm looking at the steals props down in the late night game, Clippers and Wolves. We've had Kevin Porter Jr. out the last 2 games for the Clippers. So you are seeing, right, the last time out Clippers lose time with the blowout, but we had Chris Dunn play 20.5 minutes. He left in the middle of the third quarter, didn't have to come back into the game. We had Terrence Mann go out injured last night as well. So I'm looking at like Chris Dunn. I'm looking at Derek Jones Jr., 1.5 steals lines, 1.39x for Derek Jones, 1.26 for Chris Dunn. Let me see.
So real quick, Dunn, what do you think of this Maxey steals pick? He's at 2+ in 5 straight. He's averaging 2.0. He's here at 1.13x. Is that even better than the first quarter points?
Maybe. What is Orlando doing in terms of giving up steals to?
It's just looking at the same thing. They're -4% steals, plus 63% blocks to opposing point guards. That's a shame.
I mean, Maxey's over that number in 7 of 13 games. Like you said, he's averaging 2 steals per game on the dot. We've got him right around 1.5 though. And I don't. Let me pull up the Clippers here because I want to see if we have. Do we have these guys projected in or out in terms of Terrence Mann and Kevin Porter? So we've got Terrence Mann in. I don't think he plays. We have Kevin Porter Jr. out, so he could easily slide right into those minutes there. But man, I mean, Harden 1.73 projected steals in this one. He's also on that steals board at plus 1.12. I'm kind of like the Chris Dunn number is probably the most attractive one to me at 1.26. He's averaging 1.5 on the year. 22.5 minutes per game.
Yeah, where's Minnesota on this list? Plus 36% steals for opposing point guards.
Yeah, I think Dunn is the one for me. He's over 1.5 steals in 11 of 23 games so far this season. And they come in bunches, man. Like I'm trying to sort his game log by like, minutes played here to see if we could get an interesting tier where it's like when he plays more than 24 minutes, he hits
right
at a certain rate. It seems, I mean, he's got games where he's played less than 20 minutes, 2 steals, 3 steals, really a sweet spot there in the low 20s, 4, 2, 3, 2, 2. Of course, when he's playing, 28, 30 minutes, 2, 4, 3. But
yeah,
I think Dunn is the one for me there because he just has room for that minutes load to go up tonight if we're missing man, if KPJ is out again. You would think, again, he played over 20 minutes through 3.5 quarters last night. He would have been in the mid to upper 20s if he got any sort of fourth quarter rotation at all. But the Clippers didn't play their starters in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
So I think Dunn kind of rounds out the 6 pick for me there here.
He's also over in 6 of the last 7 there with that minutes floor of 20. In previous games, we've seen him play 18, 19, 19. So slightly better minutes floor of late. over in 6 of 7. Really good matchup. The only thing I don't love is that the one game in the last 7 that he didn't get there was against this Minnesota team, but he also played 27 minutes, was 0 for 5 from the floor. So it seems like they want him on the court in this matchup.
Yeah. So I do, before we jump off the prop talk here and talk a little bit about the DFS slates, of course, the 6 picks we have here, right, is Yabusele higher than 20.5 PRA. That's 1.05x. Tyrese Maxey higher than 6.5 first quarter points. Dyson Daniels higher than 2.5 blocks plus steals. LeBron higher than 21.5 points. Bobby Portis higher than 19.5 points plus rebounds. And Chris Dunn higher than 1.5 steals, 1.2x multiplier on that one. Yep. If you're over on Prize Picks, you can get Bobby Portis rebounds still at 6.5. You can get Tobias Harris rebounds at 5.5. Now again, matchup against Boston, I get it. Tobias Harris is averaging 7 rebounds on the year. So that's been nerfed since I opened up Underdog this morning, and for good reason. I think that 5.5 line is just way too low for Tobias. Just like their fantasy point line was like 6 points too low yesterday, like I called out, and he was over that in the mid third quarter, even getting blown out by the Bucks last night. And then Yabusele, again, you can get his points and rebounds at 18 over there, and I like that a good bit. So you can definitely line shop with some of these picks here today if you're playing on multiple sites.
I think I'm going to now change my priority list here to number 1 being Dyson Daniels over 2.5 stocks, number 2 being Dunn over 1.5 steals, and then number 3 being Yabusele over 20.5 PRA. I think I'm actually prepared to go and just make this a 3-pick play right now, and then kind of wait and see on Portis and LeBron. And then that will also kind of help me get Maxey involved if we need a 6th at that point. Where are you kind of sitting on where you're at in this moment here?
No, I think I'm there with you in terms of Dyson is up there for me. I really like that Yabusele PRA at this point. And I think I could be persuaded on what my third favorite could be there. And I'm fine with it with Dunn. I think that's a little bit sneaky with Dunn. The injury report that we don't have yet, and what Minnesota is giving up in terms of steals to opposing backcourts. And I had missed the comments until just now. So it's good to see Zed in here. He was pointing out Dunn stocks. And then AJ is saying, assuming Norm Powell could sit on the back-to-back too, which could help Chris Dunn's minutes because he was a hamstring. I believe it was a hamstring for Norm Powell. And I think he was actually the one starter that did get back in for like 2 minutes last night against Portland. But he's only played 25 minutes in each of the 2 games since he's been back. And yeah, it was hamstring, just to confirm that. So appreciate you guys tuning in. Sorry I didn't see those comments until just now.
Well, I think there's also just an element of Dunn's physicality, length that can match up well with the same thing for Minnesota. So I like it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the DFS slate. Again, like I mentioned, we're still waiting on injury reports from 4 of those teams. And like some of the teams we have the injury reports for, it's tough to break down because there's multiple Q tags to important players. Brooklyn fits that mold. Miami fits that mold. Boston fits that mold. And I know we had Drew and Tatum both present at shoot around this morning. So we'll keep our eye on all of the news coming out from these teams. But again, it's kind of tough to break down, similar to the props, how we were struggling a little bit to get all the way up to 6 picks this morning on Underdog. It's a little bit tough to break down this slate fully at this point of the morning just because of what we're waiting on. But we do have a run, right? I see you have it pulled up there. And I think it's a little bit interesting that Anthony Davis and LeBron James are 2 of the top 4 in terms of the GPP scores. Also looking at ownership, Giannis, right? That is the preferred spend up tonight. I get it. The 236 total. We talked about it with Bobby Portis and his props. It's a great environment. 12-1. Bucks still need wins, trying to continue this win streak, right? They looked great last night. Kind of, I don't know, man. I think some of these teams were exposed last night. The Pistons, right? The Magic are shorthanded. No Paolo Banchero. That's not necessarily a fair fight against the Knicks. And then to a lesser extent, San Antonio. Like, they're coming in feeling hot. I was super excited. They just set a franchise record for made threes, and I guess they used them all up, Alex, because 8 of 44 last night. The defense was just fine against Phoenix. Yeah. The offense made me throw up. Yeah, and Josh in here saying, man broke his finger. Yeah, I think it was a fracture. Probably out too. Yeah, I would expect him to be out here. But there is some value here this morning, right? Mike Conley still sub 5K. If he gets out there and gives it a go, we've seen his minutes come up over the last couple games. So I think the field at this point, right, while we're waiting on the news, it makes sense to me that Mike Conley is getting a lot of attention. If Goga was able to suit up and play after missing last night, that would make some sense to me too at 5,100 against an undersized Philadelphia team. Bogdan Bogdanovic is popping there in terms of the ownership, right? Some of these 5K guys that I don't think will be overly popular by the time we get to lock do make sense for me here this morning. Bogdan was in my placeholder from last night because, again, we don't have a ton of value that is clear and, guaranteed, so to speak, right now. Is there anything standing out to you from the GPP scores, the ownership, maybe from a positive or a negative standpoint?
I think the biggest thing that I noticed is look at our projected value column as we have sorted by the top of ownership. So at the moment, like we're still waiting on a ton of news and I'm sure value will open up. But at the moment, it seems like one of those slates where chalk is going to be chalk just because there's no better option, not because the chalk is actually spectacular. And those are always my favorites because it means that you can leverage all that chalk and play more contrarian lineups. When we sort by value, like same thing. We're still seeing the best values, even the contrarian values that we might be higher on than the rest of the field, still pretty low in value. Most nights we have a +5 or a +6, something like that. We don't have anything like that. So that's kind of the biggest thing that I notice about this slate, which makes me pretty excited for it.
I'm wondering now, did I miss something with Orlando? Because I see that, or not Orlando, with the Pacers. Did I miss an injury or something here? Because Jarris Walker is popping there in the ownership projections as the third highest owned play. He got 25 minutes last night, or 25 and a half minutes last night against Toronto. I only saw 14 minutes out of Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin in his 14 and a half minutes, 30 DK points. So, and Jarris, 25 and a half, 4 DK points. Now, I guess the attention is coming because Andrew Nembhard did not start the second half.
Yeah.
And was Quentin Jackson, was he out yesterday? I am completely bamboozled by this Jarris Walker ownership right now. And clearly, because we don't have a Pacers injury report, I'm just missing something here. There's context.
It's also, I think, because Nembhard is listed as questionable. So.
Yeah, but we don't. He played last night. He didn't play in the second half, and we don't have the injury report, so we don't know officially. But
Walker also played 25 and 31 in the 2 prior games, and unlike his 4 DK points last night, had 24 and 30 in those games. So I think it's probably a carryover of that. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that ownership come down as the day goes on. And
I just don't know why. Jarris would start, because something was up with QJ last night.
Yeah,
he DNP'd.
Yeah,
and I would have expected him to slot back into the starting lineup as he has been for Nembhard. So yeah, man, I think Quentin Jackson could, if Nembhard's out, I would project QJ to start instead of Jarris. And so I think maybe that Jarris interest could really wane there. But yeah, to your point about his production, he profiles as a guy that should be right around 1 fantasy point per minute. Mm-hmm. So if he does start tonight, then I will be all like, our FTN subscribers who hang out in the NBA DFS channel know that I love me some Jarris Walker when I can get there. It was just a little bit odd for me to see him there. But again, I think I'm just missing some of the context of what we're going to see when this injury report comes out.
Do you think the low ownership will hold for both Yabusele and Maxey here? I could see it holding for Yabu because he's $6,000. I feel like Maxey's going to come up a little bit at just 8,900.
He could come up a little bit, but I don't think he's going to be overly attractive to the field in general tonight because the price came up $700 from last night. It is a much more difficult matchup going up against the Magic here tonight compared to the Hornets last night. You have an even lower implied total tonight than you did last night. Yabu's up to 6K as well. But I do think that he is more live to see his ownership number at 3% come up significantly compared to Maxey at 7, because we have the other spend up options like the Lakers in Miami. Yeah. We know how much the field wants to get to Giannis. I don't think that number is going to go down as more value opens up throughout the day. So I think Maxey he'll probably be relatively muted in terms of his ownership.
For the billionth straight slate, we have both Jalen Johnson and Dyson Daniels popping a little bit in the GPP scores. Another good game environment for these guys. Are we just going to go right back to them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why not. And again, like I also mentioned Bogdan Bogdanovic. Like I think he makes sense as a value play pretty much no matter what happens, because he's back to his, mid to upper 20s bench role with this Hawks team. We know it's a good fantasy environment. And we know when Bogdan puts it together where the peripherals are there and he shoots adequately, he can get you to 30 DK points. And especially right now, that would feel great at 4,400. He's got the guard forward eligibility, right? Like last game, 21.5 DK points in his 25 minutes. But he was 2 for 10 from the field and 1 of 8 from 3. So if he knocks down 2 more shots, right, you're flirting with the 30 DK points there. So I think Atlanta as a whole, on the flip side of that game, right, we talked about Portis, we talked about Giannis. I think the model certainly pointing us towards the Hawks side of things and getting some exposure there, at least on DraftKings.
All right, I've got one more question for you, putting you on the spot here. Anthony Davis or LeBron James as your spend up?
In DFS, I'm still going to lean towards Anthony Davis. He's just a better fantasy producer. It's been that way over the last couple seasons. Obviously, they are playing more through him this season. That's one thing that has not wavered over the first month and a half. So you are spending up, an extra $1,000 here on DraftKings to get there. But equal ownership, like, to me, the ceiling outcome between those two, like I know the model has Anthony Davis's ceiling at 69.5 there, which is very nice. But I think that ceiling is higher than that. Like 75, 80 points, even against Bam here, is not out of the question for Anthony Davis, especially after, like, I talk so much about LeBron having that down game. Anthony Davis was garbage too, right? Like we had his over on points, 10 in the first quarter, finishes with 12. So I think the Lakers as a whole going to try to make a statement here tonight. I would lean Anthony Davis and backed up by the slightly higher GPP score there for the Brow.
Yeah, Josh also pointing out a ton of value will open up if we get some Nets players out. So a lot could change about the slate dynamics that we're currently seeing. But one thing that won't change is I am in on this 3-pick play here. Dyson Daniels over 2.5 stocks, Gershon Yabusele over 20.5 PRA, and Chris Dunn over 1.5 steals. Any other closing thoughts here from you, Zach?
Real quick on FanDuel, I think Yabusele at 5,500 there makes a lot of sense if you sort FanDuel GPP scores. Maxey number 1, Yabu number 2. So the model preferring Philly over there, and you see the field likes Yabu a lot more over there, 21%. People still not interested in Maxey at 8,700. So I think if I'm going to go to Maxey, if I'm playing one lineup on both sides, he would go in clearly on FanDuel for me, following the GPP scores. The map that it puts out there for us every single day is doing us really well so far this season, right? Like we were just talking to a new subscriber, and I apologize, the name slips my mind, the screen name slips my mind, but he said the GPP scores have been great this season. And I just went back to, the week where Cade Cunningham went back to back triple doubles and was low owned for all 3 slates. He was the number 1 GPP score player on all 3 of those slates. And that's what convinced me. I think that was like the 3rd week of the season where I was like, okay, I think I'll use these GPP. Like these need to be factored into my process every night. So pointing us toward Maxey on FanDuel, I'm going to listen there, at least take a second look. You see Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson also popping over there. And speak of the devil, Cade Cunningham, $400 more than Tyrese Maxey, also in the top 10 over there in terms of GPP score. But like you brought up, Josh's comment there, Brooklyn could also open up and flip this slate on its head. Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson. Ben Simmons said he expected to play here today, so I would lean him or lean more probable on him. But DFS and Cam Johnson out, Josh is absolutely right. The Brooklyn values will open up again because we are also now missing Zaire Williams on top of Cam Thomas and on top of Noah Clowney. So that's just another team to keep an eye on. That is one of the lock games here tonight. Late lock, 7:30 for this 6-game slate. 3 of those games will go off right at lock. So it's going to be a fast and furious sprint, I think, to main slate lock here tonight, but should be fun once we get all the news.
Yeah, I'll say one last thing on the GPP scores. Like, I think Jalen Johnson is another one that it's just a phenomenal example of the GPP scores being ahead of the curve. Like, early in the season, we saw uncomfortable price tags for Jalen Johnson, so we're hesitant to go to him. And then we see these massive GPP scores, and here we are a few weeks later, and Jalen Johnson is in between Trae Young, Damian Lillard, Franz Wagner, Anthony Edwards, and Jaylen Brown in fantasy points per game. So they knew something before we knew it, and that's kind of the exact goal, and kind of shows that like the GPP scores should be highest on guys that are uncomfortable clicks, because that's why they are under owned, which is exactly what the GPP scores are telling us. So just continuing to use them, and also a reminder, people continue to really kind of find the game environments that the GPP scores are all over. That has been another really successful way to use them.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm propped out. For the moment, I am DFS'd out, but of course we will be in the FTN Fantasy Discord, the NBA DFS channel, the Pick and Games channel throughout the day. Yeah. I'll drop in some of those prize picks as well to the channel, just so we have them down, and anything else that pops here as they continue to populate that fantasy scoreboard that I love so much over there on Prize Picks.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have Walt start to post more of his picks in there as well for college football and college basketball. So be on the lookout for that, and be on the lookout for the main slate matchups show tonight for NFL week. What are we on? 14 now? That seems insane to me.
Last week of the regular season for season long.
Yeah, and for best ball, got a couple big sweats that I was. One of my biggest teams, one of the 555 best ball teams, was in great shape until Jerry Jeudy went nuts on Monday night. So now I've got an uphill battle to sweat, but it should be a fun one still. Catch all of that great stuff later today, later in the week. We will be back tomorrow, 12:30. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We will catch you next time.